welcome to the Spring 2021 interactive workshop for communication for our students who are registered with the Office of Accessibility. Today we have Heather Rose, one of the Office of Accessibility Disability Specialists, joining us. My name is Ashley Hawes. I'm the coordinator for the Peer Assistance for Support and Success program, who is hosting the workshop. I also have with me Caitlin Perry of the Speech and Hearing Clinic. Caitlin has so graciously agreed to run this workshop with us. She has some clinicians, some graduate level clinicians with us that she's going to introduce. So I'm going to send it on over to Caitlin. Thank you, Caitlin.
Sure, Ashley, thank you. So here with us today, we have 4 graduate student clinicians in our School of Speech Language Pathology and Audiology. They're all training to become speech pathologists here in the next year or so. So first, I'd like to introduce Christiana Sandum. She's right there. Allison Reese, Bridget Lucy, and Ellen Rosenfeld. And I'm going to go ahead and let Ellen take it from here. I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint real quick, so just give me a quick second.
All right, well, welcome to this seminar, everyone. Today we will be discussing effective communication strategies for students who are navigating the accommodations process here at the University of Akron. We went through all the presenters already. We chose this topic to help prevent students from experiencing breakdowns in communication with professors and other university faculty. Breakdowns in communication can prevent students from accessing their accommodations and advocating for their learning needs, which ultimately may prevent students from experiencing success in the classroom. At the college level, the process of accessing accommodations is student-driven, which is much different than what students experience from kindergarten through 12th grade, which they receive much more support. At the university level, the student must initiate the process from start to finish, which includes getting registered with the office, reaching out to professors, and coordinating accommodations from semester to semester. Students can request assistance from the Office of Accessibilities and faculty, but they need to first recognize issues and be able to effectively communicate their needs. Students who struggle with communication skills may feel overwhelmed by the accommodations process. They may feel frustrated, uncertain, anxious, or even defeated. However, we, as well as the professors and the disability specialists here at the University of Akron, want you to feel confident that you have the communication strategies to support you through the accommodations process in order to get the supports that you need to meet your academic goals. We hope that you feel empowered, reassured, confident, and comfortable. Soon we will be discussing communication strategies that will help support you in feeling all of these things. So, who are the main communication partners involved in the accommodations process? There are 3 in total. 1, the disability specialist from the Office of Accessibilities, 2, the professors, and 3, the student, you. Some common communication breakdowns that will be discussed are when or how to appropriately contact a professor. For example, when speaking to or emailing the professor, and what to consider when meeting a professor both in person and online. Now I'm going to turn this over to Bridget, who will be discussing general aspects of communication.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. So in this section, we will be discussing the aspects of communication, as Ellen just stated. And first, what is communication? Before we can provide you with strategies to help you be an effective communicator during meetings with your professors, we need to make sure that you understand the various components of communication. First off, it's important to realize that communication is an active process between two or more individuals. It involves both exchanging information and receiving information. Communication does not only involve what we say through talking, which is what we refer to as verbal communication, but it also involves a lot of gestures as well. Our gestures, facial expressions, use of eye contact, and body language communicate information to our listener as well. And we can refer to this as nonverbal communication. How to be an effective communicator? The function of this presentation is to support you in your ability to effectively express your accommodations, needs, and preferences in a way that your professors can understand. Make sure you are clearly communicating what you need and require to be as successful as possible. So, how can I or you be an effective communicator? In order to get your needs across, you have to be proactive. Professors are here to help you learn, and they want to see you succeed. It is important that you reach out to them and notify them of any accommodations you need. Give them feedback on what works for you and maybe what doesn't work so well for you. And sometimes your message may not be clearly received, or you may not understand what your professor is trying to suggest to you during a conversation. And we refer to these as communication breakdowns. It's important to be able to sense that a breakdown has occurred, as well as to know how to repair this breakdown or clarify the intended message. We will talk more about this later in the presentation, but it might include statements or questions such as, "I don't understand what you mean," or "Could you please clarify that?" So, pragmatic language is a social aspect of language. When you enter a meeting with a professor, it is polite to start with some small talk, such as "How are you?" before jumping into the reason for the meeting. Consider both your verbal and nonverbal communication, which again, we will go more into depth in later on in the presentation. And also consider the appropriateness of your comments, requests, responses, and ability to shift conversational topics. So here are some verbal and nonverbal aspects of communication. We already discussed a couple of those nonverbal, like the body language, facial expressions, gestures, and eye contacts a few slides ago. And here are some aspects of verbal communication to consider, such as tone of voice, word choice, topic maintenance, conversational turn taking with others. And again, we are going to dive deeper into these aspects a little later on in the presentation. Okay, so here are some different parts of communication based on the environment. We have face-to-face, virtual, and email. So setting up a face-to-face at the beginning of the semester is never a bad idea. This way the professor can put a face to your name, and you can discuss all your accommodations in person instead of through a long chain of emails. An email would be more appropriate if you have maybe just one or two questions, and if you have something that requires immediate attention.
So now we're going to begin our discussion about nonverbal communication. As Bridget mentioned earlier, nonverbal communication includes areas such as appearance, facial expression, eye contact, body language, posture, etc. And these are all very important aspects to consider when you are talking to your professors. So first and foremost, consider your appearance. The way you present yourself to others and the way that you dress says a lot about you. It's important to present yourself in a way so that your professor knows what you are coming to talk to them about is important to you and that it's a topic that you care about. So some general rules: make sure that your hair is groomed, wear an appropriate outfit, avoiding midriffs, plunging necklines, or low-rise pants. In general, it's nice to have a clean, neat pair of pants, maybe a dress or a skirt, paired with a blouse, a shirt, or a jacket, and that would be considered appropriate. So for example, these pictures show students who are dressed appropriately for a meeting with a professor. These pictures show clothing for a formal workplace setting. So these students might be meeting with a professor or an extern supervisor in a formal workplace setting. So maybe a co-op or a clinical setting or some sort of professional business setting. These students would be dressed formally to match the setting or perhaps even the degree of importance for the meeting. So what are some of these implications for dressing well? If you dress well, it shows your professor that you care, that you spend time in your day to look presentable, that you respect yourself and your own appearance, and in general, dressing well is a form of self-care and it really can increase confidence. So another aspect of nonverbal communication, maintaining eye contact. First and foremost, eye contact is when two people look into each other's eyes at the same time, and it is a type of body language. Maintaining eye contact is an essential part of communicating well with others. So some tips for maintaining appropriate eye contact. It's important to establish eye contact at the start. When you first meet with your professor and you introduce yourself, it's important to make that eye contact with your professor. Generally, maintaining eye contact around 70% of the time when speaking and when listening is beneficial. It's okay to perhaps look away, to write some notes down, but if you look away, do so slowly so it's not abrupt or somewhat of an awkward transition. In general, maintaining eye contact supports the social aspects of a communication exchange. This is an example of social communication or pragmatic language that Bridget discussed earlier. So some implications for maintaining eye contact. It shows that you care, that you are interested in what the speaker is saying, and it shows that you are confident. So our third aspect of nonverbal communication, consider appropriate posture and body language. So if you stand up or sit up tall with your shoulders pulled back, this reveals confidence. If you nod in response to your professor's comments, this shows that you are actively participating in the conversation, and it shows your professor that you are listening to what they're saying and that you understand what they're saying. So here we have a good example of body posture and a poor example. Would anyone like to maybe comment on a couple things that you find in the good example of body posture? What are some things that these students are doing well to display good body posture?
I think that by them, sitting up tall with their shoulders back, it shows that they are, welcoming to the situation they're in, having their hands down and kind of relaxed, shows that, they're not tense, they're not anxious about what's to come. I like that they're all smiling. That's another great thing. I think that they're doing well in the good example.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ashley. I mean, you hit every point in this good example. These students are doing well in all of those areas. Would anyone like to maybe point out some pieces of the bad example of body posture, maybe what this student could be doing better or pointing out what she's doing wrong?
I can go again.
Okay.
Oh, Heather, did
awesome.
you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So when I look at her, she does not look interested because she's not maintaining that eye contact. Her leg posture is also perhaps not appropriate for a more formal situation. Her head and her hands is very much in contrast to the slide with the better posture because she's hunched over and not really showing that she's being professional. So it kind of looks like she's just kind of hanging out, not in that formal situation, not really engaged.
Absolutely. Thank you, Heather. Both of those responses were perfect. Thank you. So in general, when you maintain eye contact and consider appropriate body posture and body language, this tells your professor that you are paying attention to what he or she is saying, that you are listening to everything that is being said, that you care about the conversation, and that you are confident in your ability to converse with your professor. Ashley, do you have a question?
I just wanted to share briefly, I'm not sure if you were going to touch on this, but I do know that Career Services has a coat closet where you can borrow, a formal blazer or coat to go into the interview. And I'm not sure if you were going to talk about this, but they do have virtual workshops that talk about a lot of this, appropriate behavior for the work setting that you were mentioning as well. So I really like that you're highlighting it here as well. But like I said, if students are interested in more information about what kind of clothing is appropriate and or they need to borrow those for an interview, the Career Services on campus is a great resource.
That's wonderful, Ashley. Thank you. I was actually not going to mention that, but Career Services is a wonderful resource and it is so helpful for every student at the university. So thank you. So another area of nonverbal communication skills is responding to your communication partner's nonverbal cues. As important as it is for you to remember all of these skills, you need to also respond to your communication partner's nonverbal skills or nonverbal cues, excuse me. Just being able to pay attention to their body language, their eye contact, or how their facial expression changes during the conversation. When you consider these factors, it will help you to determine whether your message is being conveyed effectively or whether you need to provide some clarification or additional information to your professor. So, for example, if your professor looks like this, he might be communicating to you that you are not being clear or that he needs more information. In this case, it's essential to check in with your listener to determine if he is confused or if he needs more information. So if your professor looks like this, you might say, "Is there anything else like I could say? Do you need more information? Am I being clear? Do you have any questions for me?" In this example, this depicts a professor meeting with a student on a Zoom or a WebEx call. However, she looks like this, and this might be her communicating that she understands your message and that she is listening to you and that what you are saying is clear and you're providing her with effective and sufficient information. So now Bridget will begin talking to us about meeting with professors in person.
All right. So, Mrs. Perry, could you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So before the meeting, there's some things to consider in order to prepare. When meeting with a professor, it's important to dress professionally, as Allie just went over. It would also be useful to prepare an outline of what you would like to discuss during the meeting. Try to stray away from a script. This is going to be more of a conversation style. You're going to be doing conversational turn taking with your professor. So something more like a bullet point list of talking points would be more beneficial. This way it allows for natural conversation to flow while still allowing you to hit all of those points that you would like to discuss throughout the meeting. Additionally, consider taking, paper or pen or your laptop so that you can jot some notes down during the meeting. And then also go ahead and take anything that you might need to provide, any documents that you would need to provide them with, either from the Office of Accessibilities or just any other documents that would be useful for them to have in order to help you succeed. So arriving there, being on time is very important. It is respectful. It shows you value the professor's time. It sets a good tone for the meeting. It shows you care. If you're late, kind of consider, what does that communicate to your professor? It doesn't set the stage for a very productive meeting. For a productive meeting. It doesn't show that you necessarily respect their time, and depending on how much time you set for that meeting, it could be too late. So you've arrived to the meeting and you are ready to go in. How do you enter the professor's office? So first we're going to knock on the door, and always wait for the professor to invite you in. Even if the door is cracked open, still knock or just say, "Hi, professor, I'm here for our meeting. Is it okay if I come in?" Another example would be, "Excuse me, Mr. or Mrs., and then their last name. Is this still a good time for you to meet?" So why do we have to announce our presence? Again, it's respectful to the professor's space. It allows them time to wrap up what they're doing, make that transition to your meeting. Kind of think about being in your dorm room and someone you don't really know just barges in. You're kind of taken back. It's a little intrusive. It's a little disrespectful. So, kind of think about that when you arrive at the professor's office. So we always want to use the professor's last name, for example, Professor Jones instead of Dave. The only time you should call a professor by their first name is if they explicitly tell you you can. An example of this would be your professor saying, "Call me Dave." If you're unsure of their title, such as professor, Mr., Mrs., or doctor, there's a few places you can usually find this, either in the syllabus for that class, the signature of their email, or typically the first day of classes, they'll introduce themselves, and the way they introduce themselves is typically, "I'm Dr. So-and-so," or "I'm Mrs. So-and-so," and that would be the appropriate way to address them. Okay, so during the meeting, we have arrived, we're in the office now, and it's time to introduce the reason for the meeting. And some ways you can do this is by saying, "I wanted to meet with you about my accommodations so that we can determine a plan for your course this semester." Another way, we could say, "I wanted to discuss some concerns that I have regarding my accommodations and how they will fit into your course requirements." And then a third example would be, "As you are aware, I was absent from class last week due to some medical issues that I was experiencing. I hoped that we could determine a plan so that I can catch up on the information that I missed." So the reason for introducing a meeting. Professors, especially in the general level, like if it's a general psych class, something like that, professors have hundreds of students. So if you walk in and you just kind of right off the bat start listing your needs, they're going to be confused and they're going to need a minute to gather themselves. So they'll be a little confused. This is why we want to introduce ourselves, remind them of why you're meeting with them. This is also natural. It'll build rapport. You can have that little time of small talk at the beginning, which also sets up for a productive meeting.
Professor, be sure to ask them any questions you may have about their course. It is helpful to think of questions before the meeting and write them down. This way, you can bring your notes to the meeting and get all the information you need. These are a few examples of questions you might have about a course. Would you like me to email you to remind you that I require extended timing for quizzes? If so, how much advance notice should I provide? Or another one could be, how can I maintain the supports that I have in place while still meeting some of the requirements in your course, given the need for group work? A third example could be, my disability causes me to miss class on occasion. What type of documentation do you need to show proof of the excused absences? Why should you ask questions? Well, asking questions is the only way to make sure you get all the information you need. If you don't ask, you might not get the necessary information. It also helps to clarify topics you may have been confused about. Finally, it helps to ensure you fully understand what is expected of you. If you know everything that the professor is expecting of you, you can make a plan to get it done. When you're meeting with your professor in person, use appropriate turn-taking and avoid interrupting the professor while they're talking. Please wait until the professor is done talking before you respond, and if you think of a question during the conversation, jot down a reminder for yourself so you don't forget until it is your turn to talk. Maintain eye contact, good posture, and appropriate speaking volume. Do not talk too loud or too soft, but keep it at a nice conversational level. When you're ending the meeting, be sure that there's a mutual understanding of the topic and next steps. You could summarize this by saying, so today we discussed our topic, and I will do X, Y, and Z before our next meeting. This lets the professor know that you've been paying attention to your conversation, that you understand all the information that you've talked about, and that you appreciate their time. And you can further this by thanking them for meeting with you, by saying, thank you for taking the time to meet with me today, or this really clarified things for me. Have a nice day. This lets the professor know that you appreciate their time and the information that they've given you.
Okay, in the next section, we'll be discussing what to consider when meeting with professors in an online setting. A lot of what was discussed before in in-person meetings will still apply to online meetings, but right now we'll be discussing considerations specifically for online communication. So online communication has significantly increased due to limitations associated with the pandemic, and it's likely to be here to stay well into the future. For these reasons, it's important for students to understand proper online etiquette. The first consideration a student must have is to always plan to have your camera on during meetings with professors and other students. It is true that sometimes during lectures, the professor does not require the camera to be on. However, during meetings with professors and other students, always have your camera on. But why should the camera be on during the meeting? In meetings with professors, there should be a back and forth conversation between the student and the professor. Having the camera off during an online meeting is similar to putting a wall between you and the person you're speaking to during an in-person meeting. It's unnatural, impersonal, and can be perceived as rude. Keeping the camera on shows that you are respecting the professor by letting them see you. It shows that you are there and paying attention to the meeting, and it allows the professor to see your nonverbal communication. So if you become confused, upset, or you need to ask a question, the professor might be able to see your nonverbal communication and help address the situation. The next consideration is that sometimes things happen. The internet doesn't always work and electronics break down. So about 15 minutes before the meeting, set up your laptop or computer and make sure your internet connection is good. If something happens with your internet connection or you have technical issues, then checking about 15 minutes before the meeting can give you time to either fix the issue or email the professor explaining the situation and to schedule another meeting if the issue cannot be resolved. Unfortunately, this does not mean your phone. If you have a meeting with a professor online, you should be using a laptop or a computer with a camera and microphone. Laptops and computers have larger screens and typically have better cameras and microphones, which allow the professor to see and hear you better. The next consideration is the environment, where you're sitting with your laptop or computer. Your environment needs to be quiet and free of distraction. Think of an environment at a library. Why do we need to have a quiet, distraction-free environment? It's because when meeting with other people, one should pay attention to the meeting, and having distractions can prevent people from doing that. When people are not paying attention, the conversation is not going to go anywhere. Also, in a loud environment, it can make it hard for people to hear each other and understand what the other person is saying. And a quiet environment can allow people to do that. Continuing on with having an appropriate environment, another consideration is having an appropriate background, what the camera can see behind you. Whatever is in view of the camera, the professor and the other students can see it. Consider the way the background scenery represents you. If you have cluttered shelves behind you, that might signal a message that you are disorganized or you don't have time to take care of your things. Furthermore, it might show that you're not taking the conversation very seriously. You might also consider the artwork or posters that are hung on the wall behind you. Images or words on those posters should be neutral or positive, such as a nature scene or a motivating quote. Consider including the type of art that you would see at an office building or in school or in a public setting. If you do not have an appropriate background available, consider using neutral backgrounds provided by Teams, WebEx, or Zoom. These backgrounds can cover up the environment around you. To ensure that you have an appropriate background, make sure you are sitting upright in a chair with the laptop or computer on a table or desk in front of you. Here are some pictures of good backgrounds. See how the man on the left is sitting properly in a chair and his background is appropriate? That's a good example. The girl on the right is sitting in her dorm at her desk. She has kept her room clean and decorated nicely with posters. Now we can't see what's on her posters, but since they're behind her and in view of the camera, the posters should be appropriate without obscene or rude images and words. Here are some examples of inappropriate backgrounds. For the image on the left, not only is the room messy, but the woman is lying on her bed, not at a chair. This is not appropriate for meeting with a professor. By lying on her bed, someone might assume that she's not taking the meeting very seriously and doesn't care about what the other person is saying. The image on the right, while the person has the camera set up appropriately at a desk or table, the room in the background is a mess. The camera can see laundry spilled on the bed and litter all over the floor. This is not appropriate for a meeting. Instead, the person should clean up his or her room and push all the items they don't want other people to see out of sight of the camera. In general, having an appropriate background tells people that you are responsible, that you care about the meeting and what is being discussed, and it allows you and your communication partner to focus on what is really important, and that is your accommodations. While talking about the camera view, make sure that you yourself are appropriately sitting in the camera's view. Make sure that the other person can see at least the top of your head to your shoulders. This allows the other person to clearly see who they're speaking to and benefit from nonverbals, such as head nods, eye contact, and various facial expressions made during the meeting. These are 2 examples of sitting appropriately in the camera view. Like it was mentioned before, it's best to sit at a chair, at a desk, or table to make sure you are appropriately in the camera's view. Here are some suggestions on what not to do. Number 1, do not get too close or too far from the camera. In the example on the left, the man is much too close to the camera. A good rule would be to sit the same distance from the camera as you would from someone in real life, about an arm's length apart. Number 2, do not keep looking down. You should not be looking down at your phone, and even if you are taking notes, look up at the camera once in a while. The other person needs to see your face, not the top of your head. Number 3, yes, your camera should be on, but not pointed at the ceiling or floor, like in the example on the right. The camera should be pointed at you, since you are the one having the meeting with your professor or other students. Number 4, yes, you might be in your dorm or in your bedroom, but with the camera like it should be, people can see you and what you're wearing. So dress appropriately like you would for an in-person meeting. Do not wear pajamas, and please wear pants. Do not end up being embarrassed like the reporter on the example on the left. Why should people sit appropriately in meetings? It lets the other person see your nonverbal communication. It shows that you're paying attention to the meeting, respecting the other person, and it can also prevent embarrassing situations from happening, like in the slide before. Similar to meeting in person, you don't need to talk too loudly or too softly. Unless the other person says something about the volume, keep your speech at a normal volume. Do not purposely raise or lower your voice. It's not necessary for the other person to hear you. If you were to shout, it might convey a message that you're upset, and it might cause your listener to feel overwhelmed or make it difficult to focus on what you're saying. If you're to speak too quietly, it may convey a message that you're not confident in what you're speaking, or that you feel embarrassed. Also, similar to having a meeting in person, it's helpful to have a writing utensil to take notes on what is said during the meeting, and it can also be helpful to prepare a note sheet beforehand with notes on what you need to tell the professor or questions you would like to ask. Next, I'll be turning it over to Allison, who will be discussing tips for emailing professors.
Ashley, do you have a question or a comment?
I do. I was wondering, what should a student do in the event that they receive a phone call during a meeting with a professor, or if they're meeting with their disability specialist or some other kind of important meeting? What kind of tips would you suggest in that instance?
First of all, it would be beneficial to have your phone on silent if you're doing both an in-person meeting and online meeting, so that your talk with the professor or another faculty member isn't interrupted. However, if you're expecting an important phone call about something you can't miss, then it would be appropriate to notify the other person that you're expecting an important phone call, so the other person isn't taken off guard when you need to step away for a second to take that phone call.
Those are great suggestions. Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Okay.
Well, thank you, Ellen. As she said, this next section is going to be about tips for emailing your professors. So some of the topics that we're going to be covering include that your email should have an informative subject line, include background information, introduce the main message, use formal language, correct spelling and grammar, and you should sign your name at the end of the email. So first and foremost, your email should include an informative subject line that clearly states the topic of your message. So some examples of this would be accommodations needed for introduction to ethics, extended timing reminder for April 1st exam, future absence for March 10th, lecture Chem 101, section B. All of these subject lines are informative and they clearly state the topic of the message. You could also consider including your last name in the subject line to increase your professor's attention to your email and to make it easier for your professor to locate the email in their inbox. Some more tips. Your email should use formal language in greetings and in closings. Dear Dr. Smith or Dear Professor Smith. Bridget mentioned earlier about not calling your professor by his or her first name unless they indicate that you can do so. It's important to be very formal in your emails and in your greetings and closings to your professors. And then, of course, signing it with sincerely, Allison Reese, or thank you for your time. Just being very formal in those closings. It's also important to not have slang, abbreviations, or profanity in any of your emails. Using formal language in an email indicates that you respect your professor and that you are able to write in a professional way. Your email should include background information. Introduce yourself. This is a very important part of emailing a professor. Simply starting off with saying, hello, my name is Allison, and I am enrolled in your Introduction to Ethics course. This helps your professor know who you are and how they would know you. If I simply began just typing out my email, they would have no background information. They would not know my name and they might not know at all what course I'm talking about. So including background information and introducing yourself is essential to writing an email to your professors. Your email should include the main reason you are reaching out to your professor. For example, I'm emailing you to inform you about the accommodations that I need in your course this semester. I'm emailing you to provide a friendly reminder that I will require extended timing for our exam. Or I'm emailing you to let you know that I am having symptoms that will require me to be absent today. If you do not include the main reason that you are reaching out in your email, your professor will not be able to give you the accommodations that you need and deserve. So it is essential that you include the main reason you are reaching out to your professor in your email. Your email should also be concise or to the point. You should include appropriate punctuation, capitalization, and spelling. A great tool to use that can help you do this is Grammarly. And finally, your email should also maintain a respectful tone. Going back to your email being concise or to the point, if your email is too lengthy or wordy, your professor might not be able to pick out the main reason that you are reaching out to them. So it's very important to be clear and to the point so that your professor is able to identify the reason you are reaching out to them and that they are able to help you. Another helpful tip, please reread your email before sending. You could read it out loud, or you could ask a friend or family member to review the email if needed. Grammarly is, again, another great tool that can help you do this. It's important to reread your email because you want to make sure it is free of errors and that you are including all of the essential information in your email. Avoid sending multiple emails to your professors at once. Provide your professors with at least 48 hours to reply to your email before reaching out again. This is very important. You do not want to bombard your professor with emails or questions because again, we talked about how important it is to be clear and concise. If a reply cannot wait 48 hours, consider calling your professor's office phone or contacting your disability specialist. However, it is very important that if you do need to be in contact with your professor, attempt to send that email with a reasonable amount of time for your professor to respond to it so that it's not at the last minute. However, if more than 48 hours have passed without a reply, send a follow-up email on the same email thread. To do this, you would go to your sent mail and you would find the email that you previously sent to your professor and respond to that email. You would simply click reply. We do this to help the professor find the information quickly and to not inconvenience them in any way. So if you reply to the email you sent to your professor already, you could say something such as, I just wanted to follow up on the email that I sent to you on this date. Thank you for your assistance. I am looking forward to hearing from you. And we have created a checklist that summarizes all of this information. This checklist will be a useful tool when composing your emails to your professors. So this checklist just goes over everything I just discussed. You can check. My email is free of error. My email does not include slang or abbreviations. I included an informative subject line. A checklist that includes things such as that information. And we will be sure to make sure that Ashley and Heather have this resource and that they're able to provide it for all of the students who use the Office of Accessibility. So now we have some interactive slides that show some email examples. So here is a poorly written email to a professor. Subject, help. Body, hi, I need accommodations this semester. Can you, hello me, set this up please? I'm not really sure how to do that, LOL. Thanks. So would anyone like to maybe point out a few of the things that are poorly written in this email?
Allie, I can go.
Okay.
The subject line is not specific, so it might not capture the professor's attention, or it might be very confusing to the professor. Other things that I see, the greeting is not specific to the professor. It's not formal. It doesn't include appropriate capitalization. In the introduction, I need accommodations for this semester. It's not specific. I see other capitalization errors. I see a spelling error. Overall, the email is very vague. It doesn't always include formal language like we would expect in an email for a professor, including LOL. I don't see a closing, the student's name isn't specifically stated. The course is not listed. So I think that there are a lot of areas that the student could improve upon in order to better address his or her issue.
Thank you, Mrs. Perry. You captured every aspect that I was looking for. So thank you for that. So in general, if we're referring back to the previous email example, what impression would that email give to your professor? Perhaps that you lack the professional skills required to compose an email, that you do not respect your professor. There was no formal greeting or formal closing whatsoever in that email. And it might indicate that you do not care about your classes or the accommodations that you truly need. So here we have a good email example to a professor. Subject line, English Composition 1, accommodations needed. The email body, good afternoon, Professor Zippy. My name is Allison Reese, and I am a student enrolled in your English Composition 1 course. and here is where I would provide the course number and section. I am emailing you to inform you about the accommodations I will need for your class this semester. I am registered with the University of Akron's Office of Accessibility, so hopefully the letter of accommodation from the office has been sent to you. And then I would explain in a sentence or two the exact accommodations that I need. And I would end the email with, I look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, Allison Reese. Ashley, do you have a question or comment?
Let me unmute myself. I do. So sometimes in my emails, I feel like I can be a little too formal. So I was wondering what kind of balance would be needed between too formal and warm, and how I might accomplish that, and what kind of message it would send to my professor.
What kind of message that an email that is too formal might send?
Yes. Yes.
That's a great question. I think that an email that would be composed too formally sometimes might indicate that, you know, you're trying too hard. It might indicate that, you know, maybe it might take away some of the sincerity from the email. I think because, you know, obviously when you're having a conversation with someone, you might not always be speaking in the most formal way. So I think it might lack some sincerity. I feel as though this email example is not overly formal. I think that it's well written and composed well for a professor. Does anyone else have any maybe input or comments for Ashley's question?
I do, Allie. I think that maybe it would be appropriate to be a little bit more formal for your first introduction email. And as you correspond back and forth with your professor and get to know your professor, perhaps you can be slightly less formal. We're trying to make our formality consistent with kind of the seriousness of the conversation. So think about it that way, and also how familiar you are and kind of the extent of your relationship with your professor will play roles as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Perry, and thank you, Ashley, for your question. Would anyone like to perhaps point out some of the things that are well done in this email?
I can list a few. First of all, the subject line is informative, it's specific, gives the professor a little glimpse of what they're going to be reading. The good afternoon, Professor Zippy, that's an appropriate, introduction, as well as stating the person's name in the body of the email. My name is. Again, very informative and very specific to what that student needs. If anyone else has anything to add.
Thank you, Bridget. That was great. And I would agree with all of those statements. And the closing is formal. I feel as though the background information is clear and the main message is stated within the body of the email. So thank you for contributing, Bridget. So in general, what impression would this email give to your professor? That you are able to compose appropriate and well-written emails, that you are able to address someone formally and appropriately, and that you care about your academics and that you take your education seriously. And now, Chrisanna will present a video about what comes next if you are totally unable to get in contact with your professor.
Give me one quick second to get it set up. Thanks everyone for your patience. All right. Please let me know if you cannot hear the audio.
It's been more than 2 days, and I still haven't heard anything from Professor Smith. What should I do now? Maybe if I just wait and don't do anything, she'll email me back. But I need an answer to my question soon, so that's not an option for me. I think I'll send her another email, just in case she didn't see the first one. I'll start by saying something polite, like, "Hello, Professor Smith. I'm emailing you as a follow-up to my earlier email." Then I'll remind her what my question was. "Did you get my request to take my test in the testing center? Please let me know as soon as you can. Sincerely, Jane Johnson." All right, let's see how that looks. Let me check that. I have my checklist here with me. I used my subject line. I used a formal greeting and a formal closing. I gave my background information for my problem. I included the main reason that I'm reaching out to my professor. It looks pretty concise to me. I think I kept a formal, respectful tone. My spelling looks okay, my grammar looks okay. I think I capitalized everything I needed to. And I punctuated everything. And I was careful not to use slang abbreviations or profanity. And the last point on the checklist is proofreading it, and I've just done that. So I'll send that off and see if she gets back to me. All right, it's been a night and I still haven't heard anything, so I'm starting to get a little bit stressed out. I need an answer by class time at 3 tomorrow. So who else can I contact? Well, maybe my disability specialist could help. The sooner I email her, the sooner I can get an answer. Hello, Cindy. I'm having trouble contacting Professor Smith with a question. I need an answer by class time at 3 tomorrow. Can you please help me to contact someone who knows the answer? Sincerely, Jane Johnson. All right, take a look at how that one looks. That one looks good too. So I'll send that one off and see what she says. Cindy wrote me right back. She says, "Dear Jane, I'm happy to help. I think you should try calling the professor on the phone first, since that will give you an answer the quickest. Check the first page of the syllabus for the professor's office phone number. If you can't find it there, try searching the university website for their name, and you should find a link to their information. If the professor does not respond to you in a timely manner, try contacting the department chair of that subject. They will find your professor for you and let them know what you want to talk to them. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. Sincerely, Cindy." All right, I think I have the syllabus in my folder. Okay, yeah, the number's at the top. I really don't like phone calls, but I guess it's the best way to get an answer.
Hello.
Hello, Professor Smith.
Yes, who's speaking?
This is Jane from your Tuesday English 1 class. I tried to send you an email a few days ago and I never got a response.
Oh, Jane, I'm so sorry I missed your email. The internet has been down at my house all weekend. What's your question? How can I help you?
Well, I know we have our first test tomorrow afternoon, and I wanted to make sure that you saw my request to take my test at the testing center.
Thank you for reminding me. I had that written down at the beginning of the semester, but I've been so busy with the internet going down that I haven't sent your test over to the testing center yet. I'll do that as soon as we hang up. My apologies.
Oh, I understand. Thank you for helping me.
Of course. Is there anything I can help you with further?
No, that was my only question. I feel pretty good about the test.
Great to hear. Well, if you don't have any more questions, I'll see you in class next week.
Okay, sounds good. Goodbye.
Have a good night. Bye-bye. All right, everyone. That concludes our presentation. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Sure, Ellen.
So they said that we can't use professors' first names, but in that video, they put Cindy. Can we do that? Can we call professors by first names?
I can answer that. So, in that situation, Jane was emailing the disability specialist who she had a personal connection with previously. So, I was assuming in that situation that her disability specialist had allowed her to use her first name and that they were already set up with that informal greeting.
Good question.
Oh, I see.
Does anybody else have a question about the video? All right, well, thank you.
So we appreciate everyone viewing our presentation, and we just want to let all the students at the University of Akron know that we're located in the Polsky building. The first floor, we have a clinic here at the University of Akron where our graduate student clinicians who are training to become speech pathologists see clients on a weekly basis. So our services are actually free for speech services to University of Akron students. If you're interested in learning more about that opportunity, I'd encourage you to send me an email at cperry, that's CPERRY, at uakron.edu. You can also look us up on the University of Akron website. Again, it's called the Audiology and Speech Center. So we would look forward to hearing from you if you're interested in discussing communication strategies further. Anything else from Ashley or Heather?
No, thank you guys so much for joining us and for the very informative presentation. It will be available on our YouTube channel, and I hope that students contact you for further information.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.